And Brandon, let's move on into our next topic, and that'll be, and I say next topic, it's the big board. We're moving into
it's the same
6 through
topic.
15. I'm just so used to, hey, let's move on to our next topic. No, let's just move on into the next bracket, which will be 6 through 15. If you're joining us on YouTube, what are you doing? You didn't check out the first one? I'll try to put, if future me remembers, I'll try to put it up there above Brandon. Odds are I won't. Or odds are I'll be like, damn it, I didn't get to do that, and I'll do it like 2 days later. But future me, you got to remember to do that for the people. But Brandon, how we're gonna do this is like we do like always. We'll list off our 6 through 15, who we got from 15 to 6, and then we will talk about the key guys, some key positions we're gonna talk about for this area of our big board. Being the gracious host that I am, I will let you go first. Give us your 6 through 15.
Well, starting at 15, I've got Josh Allen, the outside linebacker from Kentucky, not the quarterback who then went back into college to come out again. At 14, Greg Little, the offensive tackle from Ole Miss. At 13, DeAndre Baker, the cornerback from Georgia. At 12, Justin Herbert, the quarterback from Oregon. At 11, the West Virginia quarterback Will Grier. At 10, Clellan Ferrell, part of that wonderful Clemson defensive line, the defensive end. At 9, Dwayne Haskins, the quarterback from OSU. At 8, Jonah Williams, the offensive tackle from Alabama. At 7, Devin White, the linebacker from LSU. And at 6, the defensive tackle from Clemson, Dexter Lawrence.
And then going right into mine, I will start with that cornerback that you had at number 13. I'm going to start with DeAndre Baker from the Georgia Bulldogs. Then at number 14, a guy we talked about in segment numero uno, Devin Bush, the linebacker from the Michigan State the Michigan Wolverines. Wow, Michigan fans are going to be upset that I threw in the Michigan State before Wolverines, but Michigan Wolverines. It was because I was thinking of their hated rival, and who I've got at 13, Dwayne Haskins, the quarterback from the Ohio State University. Number 12, Clellan Ferrell, the defensive end from the Clemson Tigers. Then at number 11, Jonah Williams, offensive tackle from Alabama, Roll Tide. Then at number 10, quarterback from the Oregon Ducks, quack, quack, Justin Herbert. Then at number 9, Ole Miss offensive tackle, Greg Little. Then at number 8, the guy you had at 6, Dexter Lawrence, defensive tackle from the Clemson Tigers. Then at number 7, Josh Allen, the linebacker from the Kentucky Wildcats. And then rounding everything out for my 6 through 15, at number 6, Rashawn Gary, the defensive end from the Michigan Wolverines. And the first thing I want to look at, and I know that I have to say this, Brandon, there are going to be a few people that get upset at us for this next conversation we are going to have, because we all know we've hit the nail on the head, we've beat the dead horse. This is not the strongest of quarterback classes. We know that. I don't have to say that over and over.
Can I just make a really quick mention?
Go ahead.
Is that when they say strong quarterback classes, do they use the word strong in terms of there's a lot, or do they use the word strong in terms of these quarterbacks are really good? Because if you look at the quarterback class from this last year, it was going to be a strong quarterback class. I'm unimpressed. Just to be honest, I mean, they're not. I'm not saying they're bad, but they're very underwhelming.
But
this year they've been underwhelming, and they have a lot of room to grow. And I expected they will, but they have a lot of room to grow.
The thing too, and this is
no one came out when it was a Ben Roethlisberger and went like 15-1 in his
I just want to say
season.
this: the Jets are basically shutting down Sam Darnold because they got no offensive weapons around him and an offensive line that can't protect him. The Arizona Cardinals baby Josh Rosen. Oh, we're down by 14. Let's run the ball, Josh. Let's run the ball. We'll baby you. We don't want to set you up for failure. Here, we'll deal with our kid gloves when we're holding Josh Rosen.
I know.
That's also part of the problem. Plus, with Josh Allen, he was injured this year as well. Lamar Jackson's probably looked like the best rookie.
But do you know what I'm saying? It's like, we have a lot, so it's a really strong quarterback class.
What they're saying is, and I kind of right now am saying this, and I've made this comparison before, is right now I look at this quarterback class, and it might be only because of Justin Herbert, because Dwayne Haskins might go back, and we'll talk about that in a second. This might be a minor step up from the E.J. Manuel class, where we had we had E.J. Manuel, Geno Smith was in that class, The Ginger Giraffe, Mike Glennon, was in that class. Matt Sparkles Barkles, after he went back to college and came back, was in that class. Remember Ryan Nassib? He was going to be the guy for the Giants. Then Tyler Wilson. Landry Jones, he got cut from the Steelers this past year before this season. We also had Brad Sorensen. Remember him from Southern Utah.
I'll be honest, I don't.
Zach Desert, the Miami, Ohio guy. Everyone's like, oh, he'll be the next Big Ben because he's from Miami of Ohio. And then B.J. Daniels from South Florida and Sean Renfree from the Duke Blue Devils. Yeah, it doesn't scream a great quarterback class to me. Oh, and I forgot about Jeff Tull from Washington State, who went undrafted and signed with the Buffalo Bills. So that's what I think of right now when I think of this draft class. But the thing I want to ask you about is quarterbacks. And people are going to get upset because they're going to say, guys, this is such a rich defensive class. What are we doing talking about the quarterbacks? Well, the league meaning the NFL, rides and dies on quarterbacks. And there are teams that need quarterbacks. So, of course, we're going to talk about quarterbacks in this segment because this is where we have most of ours. I've got my only 2 quarterbacks here. You have your 3 quarterbacks in this range from 6 to 15. We're going to look at each of them, but the first guy I want to start with is Justin Herbert. And the big thing, and you could say this about Dwayne Haskins too, the question is, will he come out? Will he declare for the draft? Because there are kind of lingerings and some voices coming through the grapevine that are saying he's probably going to come back for a senior year. And before I ask you if he should or shouldn't, I want to throw this at you. Player A, player B, I will tell you player B is Justin Herbert and who I'm going to compare him to. Player 1, also Pac-12 quarterback. In his junior year, threw for 2,800 yards. He completed 58% of his passes, threw 21 touchdowns, 11 INTs, a 130 passer rating. Justin Herbert this last year, almost a 3,000-yard passer. He had 2,985, 28 touchdowns, 8 interceptions, 59%, almost 60% of his passes completed, 147.7 quarterback passer rating. Now, the first guy I mentioned, obviously Justin Herbert, this is his junior year. The guy that I just mentioned at player A was a quarterback junior. We thought he was going to come out. He did not. He came back for a senior year. That senior year, he threw for 6,000 yards or 600 yards less. He was a 22.
6,000 yards.
600. Wow. 2265 was his final passes. He had 3% knocked off of his completion percentage. He was a 55 completion passer, 17 touchdowns, 9 interceptions, 124% passer rating in the same amount of games, 12. That quarterback, if you guys at home want to play, pause it, put it in the comment section who you think it is. I'll wait. Jake Locker. That's who it was. It was Jake Locker. The guy who if he would have came out junior year, would have been a lot higher than he was his senior year. And that was also because I believe, if my memory is serving me right, and I will check this while you are talking, that the 2010 quarterback class was stronger than the 2009 quarterback class. With that comparison being made, I'm going to ask you this. In your heart of hearts, should Justin Herbert declare for the draft this year or stay at Oregon for a senior year?
Well, here's what I really think is that I'll just go right ahead and say it. I think he should stay for a senior year. I have him right here, but I really think he should stay for a senior year. And the reason for that is because while he's very good, great arm, athleticism, the guy is a really good quarterback and a great talent. He is still so raw. He is still so raw. And I think that there is so much refining that can be done with him that if he stays his senior season, there is a very good opportunity for him to grow, for him to get better now while in college, be able to do some of that refining. And then once it's time to go NFL, he is one of the top quarterbacks, as opposed to just being some guy who is, yeah, he's good. He's going to be right here in the middle. Possibly by staying, he could give himself a chance for a top 5 pick.
Mm-hmm. And I'll be completely honest, I mixed up the draft classes. So his draft class was the 2011. Yep, 2011 was when he was drafted. First off, by the way, before the comment section calls me an idiot.
They will anyways, just continue.
So remember how I said I remember the 2009 draft class being a weak quarterback class? Do you want to know the first 3 quarterbacks off the board?
Yeah, sure.
Matthew Stafford, number 1. Mark Sanchez at number 5. Josh Freeman at 17. Coming out of college, those were 3 good quarterbacks. Josh Freeman didn't pan out. Mark Sanchez was pretty good with the Jets before he fumbled his career away. And Matthew Stafford is still a starter for the Detroit Lions. But 2010 would have been the year. So 2010 would have been the year Jake Locker came out. That class included, now just list off the top 5 drafted. Sam Bradford was number 1. Jake Locker wasn't going to touch Sam Bradford. However, guess who went number 2 in terms of quarterbacks? To the Denver Broncos. Timmy Tebow. Tim Tebow. You're telling me Jake Locker would have been drafted before Tim Tebow? I think he would have. We also saw Jimmy Clausen was in that draft class. Colt McCoy was in that draft class.
You have to also remember you're a Tim Tebow hater.
Yeah, but I think that Jake Locker can throw the ball better than Tim Tebow. Tim Tebow's throwing mechanics were horrible. Let's be honest.
But the guy scored touchdowns.
Yeah, he was a gamer and he was a winner.
He found ways to score touchdowns.
We get it. He was a gamer.
Like I said, Tim Tebow hater.
He's a better baseball player than he is a football player. But here's the draft class he came out with.
He did pretty well though when he was in the NFL. How did Jake Locker do?
Jake Locker, here's the thing.
How did Jake Locker do when he was in the NFL?
Did not do well.
Thank you.
And that's
Tim Tebow won a playoff game.
He won a playoff game.
But it goes back to what did Jake Locker do? He did 0 things.
Here's the thing. And I mean, with Jake Locker, it's a little different because the only one that he had to compete with, like Cam Newton was the number 1 pick in the class that he came out. The 3 that were drafted was Jake Locker, Blaine Gabbert, and Christian Ponder were the other quarterbacks. The next 2 drafted after them, Andy Dalton and Colin Kaepernick, had better careers than the first 3. But Justin Herbert is, I think what magnifies this for him is this is a different situation. And what makes this situation different is I'm going to pull Dwayne Haskins into this conversation now. Dwayne Haskins is a sophomore but can technically declare for this draft because he's been in college for 3 years or out of high school for 3 years. Let's say Dwayne Haskins, after 1 year of being a starter, says, no, I'm going to come back. That makes Justin Herbert's decision then, to me, even harder. Because what do you want to do? Do you want to then come out, clearly be the number 1 quarterback, get drafted to a team like, let's be honest, to the Giants or the Jaguars? Those are the top 2 quarterback needy teams unless someone else trades up in the draft, and then be able to work with NFL coaches to develop yourself? Or do you want to come back and then put yourself in the running? Because let's be honest, if Dwayne Haskins comes back to college, Justin Herbert, to me, would then be the 3rd best quarterback in 2020. Because this is how it would go. Tua Tagovailoa, Dwayne Haskins after another year, Justin Herbert. That's how the order would go as we would start the quarterback rankings for 2020.
And I think we'd be looking at 3 very good quarterbacks. And Justin Herbert would be right up there with the other 2. And I know that some people will say, well, Tua and Dwayne have really put themselves up there in a 1-2 category of their own, with everyone else kind of falling way behind them. But I don't think Justin Herbert is falling way behind them. I think that what Herbert did throughout this season, and I think that with what he has done just in coming from where he was to now this year, it's an incredible step in the right direction, a big leap, honestly, in the right direction. And he does have so many skills. He doesn't, I don't even necessarily think that he doesn't probably need to throw it as much as guys like Dwayne Haskins have thrown it this year for Ohio State, where I feel like Dwayne Haskins was throwing it 60 times a game for a couple of times there. Justin Herbert and the Oregon team, I feel like have maybe a little bit better balance than what Ohio State has. You can correct me if I'm wrong in the comment section. I know you will. But I just there's some really good things here with Justin Herbert and what he is able to do. But I also do believe that a year back in college could help him to, like I said before, help him to refine some of his things that he needs to work on. With number one of those still with me, and I said this on the big board the first time, is that he probably needs to do a better job of decision making. He needs to do a better job of, when he goes through his progressions, not always falling on that first guy
and not panicking.
if you if you have to continue to go through your progressions and look at option 2, option 3, and not then taking a sack or throwing an interception.
I'm going to ask you this, and this is kind of, it didn't work like this for Jake Locker, who I brought in, where Jake Locker, if he would have came out after junior year, let's just say he goes to Denver, which was already had a playoff roster, already had a overall roster that made the playoffs with Team Tebow. I think would have made the playoffs with Jake Locker, instead of going to Tennessee, who was a higher pick, didn't have that great of a roster at the time, was a definitely different team than we have right now in Tennessee. Should that play into the decision as well? Where Justin Herbert, let's say he goes to the Giants or the Jaguars this year, which, let's be honest, if he falls on that Jaguars team, that'd be a match made in heaven because he's way better than Blake Bortles. Even that Giants team is not a bad team. They've got pieces there.
They've got playmakers. They've got a lot of playmakers.
Or would it behoove him to say, hey, I will come back because I don't care if I'm behind Tua and Dwayne, because even if I'm the third best quarterback and I go in the first round, I'm going to a playoff team. However, the catch-22 then is, yeah, you go to a playoff team, but what if it's like a Patriots situation where it's like, oh, if I would have went to the Jaguars or Giants, I'd be starting right now, but now I got to wait for this veteran either to get hurt or retire.
Would you be upset to play behind Tom Brady and learn from Tom Brady?
Well,
if he was going to be willing to teach you anything.
Exactly. I would, if I was Justin Herbert, and I know that the college decision, it's also like the thing we got to think about with colleges, it's just like the fans, there's a connection. So like there might be a connection to where, hey, I want to win a Pac-12 title. I want to get to the playoff with this Oregon team. I think we can do it. I'm going to come back for that. He could be thinking that. But me, without that connection, I would come out this year because I would want to start in the NFL as quick as possible. And when you've got quotes like this from Mel Kiper where Herbert is the guy in this draft class. You could take that however you want. The air quotes were italicized, the guy. I don't know if that's Mel Kiper saying he is the guy. I don't know if that's Mel Kiper saying, well, yeah, he's the guy because this draft class is weak at quarterback. But I, in every sense, would say, hey, I'm going to go and I'm going to be a higher pick this year and maximize everything than coming back to school. But if he came back to school, I wouldn't chastise him for it, if that makes any sense.
No, I completely agree. I think that it's all about, at the end of the day, as it is for everybody, what do you want to do? What do you believe is going to be best for you, your future, your career, and being able to make the most money for you and have the most success? And there are guys who, before they wouldn't come out because they didn't want to go to the Cleveland Browns, or they didn't want to go to this team, or they didn't want to go to that team. So, okay, I'll stay. Because I am not going to afford my career to be ruined by going to the Cleveland Browns. And that was a time before. Now I think if you were going to the Cleveland Browns, it would be like,
all right,
I want to go to the Cleveland Browns. This looks like a team that's really on the rise.
Last two questions I got with the quarterbacks away from Justin Herbert. First one, Dwayne Haskins. Same question I asked about Justin. Should he come back or should he stay? Or should he stay in school? Should he declare for the draft?
Dwayne Haskins, I mean, this is a guy who is so good, and he could definitely come out and I think make an impact for a team, but he's going to stay. And this is why I think so, is because I think that he saw what Ohio State did this year, where they went from on their high horse, top of the perch, to lose to Purdue, to everything's over, to, as usual, beat Michigan, everything's back on board, to win Big Ten championship game and be just steps away from possibly being in the playoff. He wants to take his team to a playoff.
Well, and not just that. I am, on this case with Dwayne Haskins, I am on the sense of come back to school. And the reason why I say that is, for a guy like Justin Herbert, he's been a 2-year, at least a 2-year at least starter. Where 2017 he was a starter, it got cut short because he had the collarbone injury, and then he played the 12 games this year. Where basically, to me, if Dwayne Haskins came out after this year, you know who I would compare him to? Cardell Jones. First year starter, leaves after 1 year of starting. I'm on my high horse. I'm in the playoff. I know Dwayne Haskins not in the playoff, but Ohio State was on a high horse at the end of the year. I'm going to go out and into the NFL draft. How did that necessarily work for Cardell Jones? Not that great, because he still needed a lot of work. Where Dwayne Haskins, I would say, come back, get that second year as a starter. Because look at all the guys. I know you criticized him a little bit, poking fun at him earlier in the segment about the guys who was drafted this year. But take a look at him. Sam Darnold, at least a 2-year starter. Josh Rosen, at least a 2-year starter. Baker Mayfield, at least a 2-year starter. Josh Allen, at least a 2-year starter. When you can have that, even Jameis Winston, who I can't stand, who I think is a garbage, Tampa Bay fans come at me, I think is a garbage quarterback at the NFL and would not want him anywhere near my team, mainly because of his decision makings, not because of his play on the field. He came out after as a redshirt sophomore, but he had 2 years as a starter with the Florida State Seminoles. That's why for Dwayne Haskins, I would personally come back. Last quarterback question I want to ask you before we move on into a linebacker. Will Grier, let's say Herbert and Haskins go back. If you're the Giants, and I know this is kind of a mock question, but I'm pulling it in anyways, because neither Mark and I next week are going to mock Will Grier to either of these teams. Giants are currently at 7. Jags are currently at 9. Niners don't need a quarterback. Raiders don't need a quarterback. Jets don't. Cardinals don't. Lions don't. Falcons don't. If Haskins and Herbert go back to college, if you're the Giants or the Jags, would you pull the trigger on Will Grier with the 7th or the 9th pick in the NFL draft?
I would. I sure would. I really like Will Grier. I really like Will Grier a lot. He's a big quarterback, big arm. He can find his man, and he loves his main man over in West Virginia. He's a guy who sometimes, again, decision-making, you look at and you go, why the heck would he do that? But I think overall he's got a lot of good, he's got a great skill set. He's got some great intangibles. I'm a big fan, and I know that someone might say, and it's a fair point, a fair question. How would he fare in a system that is not hell-bent on passing all the time? With obviously him coming from the Big 12 primarily, with a stint in Florida, but this is also a team, if you notice, West Virginia, they were a team that did put the ball on the ground in terms of running the football a number of times throughout the season and had some success. Obviously, they threw the football more almost all the time, but with the ball in his hands, the guy is lethal. For the Giants, you're looking for someone who can get the ball to Odell Beckham, who can get the ball down the field, who's not afraid to take those shots. Will Grier is not afraid to take a shot, and he's got the arm to do it. For Jacksonville, they would be excited to have a guy who can hold the ball in his hands, at this point, because it's just been just been so bad.
Cody Kessler won them a game, man. It was only 6-0, but Cody Kessler won them a game at the quarterback position.
No, he didn't. The defense won them that game, and the referee helped them at the end of the game.
Andrew Luck, his first shutout as starting quarterback of the Colts.
But I think that overall, this would be a guy who, if I'm the Jags, if I am the Giants, I am saying please, 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 please come to us, because truly, I think that there's a lot to like with Will Grier. Again, big guy, big quarterback.
Big guy.
And someone who definitely has a strong arm and good accuracy when throwing to his guys. That could be a match made in heaven if he went to the New York Giants, and if he was one of the only options for this year. If, like you said, if it's a scenario where these other two quarterbacks go back into college, they stay in school, and Grier is out, that would not. I wouldn't even feel like you're taking the leftovers. I would feel like you're getting a winner, and you're getting a guy who you might go after anyways.
Here's what I think before we get into the defensive side is right now, and this is before I've dissected and kind of looked at these guys and kind of Ron Jaworski'd it, locked myself in a room and just kind of had my eyes open like this and just watched film after film after film. Right now, I think he's, to me, a second round. He's an early second round guy. Like, if I was the Giants, pass on him at 7, I'll get him early in the second round. Or he's a Lamar Miller type of guy. And when I say that, falls all the way until that, like, late 20s, early 30s, I'll trade up and get that option on him. I'll trade up, get that 5th-year option, and draft him in the first round. That may change, though, as I dissect these players, look at more film. I'm just going off of what I've seen this year because the decision for the Giants, let's say Herbert and Haskins go bye-bye and go back to college. The decision for these quarterback-needy teams at the top, mainly the Giants and the Jags, will be this then. For me, semi-reach on a Will Grier. Because you're right. He's got all like the arm strength. He's got the pocket presence. He's got the mobility. He's got all the tools that I like. The main thing that I think, which is his biggest con, is that his mechanics aren't the greatest. So for me, you're going to draft him and you're really going to work on him. He's not going to be a guy that steps in and is phenomenal. He's not like a Sam Darnold where we're like, he is pro-ready, he's going to step in, and he's going to be fine. You're going to have to work with him a little bit. You're going to have to get those mechanics down at the next level, and that's why for me right now I feel like pass on him. There's no one else in the first round right now that I think would take a quarterback, and then I would pounce on him, either trade up if the trade is right late in the first round or take him in the second round. Do you have a rebuttal to that before we move on?
And, I don't really. I think that when you really get into the mechanics part, if you really want to talk mechanics and you want to get really in nitty-gritty, I think that's a longer conversation.
Way longer.
That I don't think that we have the time to have right now. But I am understanding of the fact that a team may say, well, he doesn't have your prototypical, fluid motion mechanics. I mean, we see all the time,
but he's not as bad as Tim Tebow.
Are they coming out from are they over the top? Are they, you got Matt Stafford doing these sidearm BSs all the time.
Like I mentioned, Tim Tebow clockwork motion.
Yeah, so it's like that you can get into, and again, we will one day, but it's not going to be today. But I understand where you're at with that. But again, I don't think it's especially a team that needs a quarterback so badly, and it's a year like this year where two quarterbacks who are really good, but they stay in school, and Will Grier's kind of the guy that you're looking at. Again, other people have talked about the quarterback from Duke. I like Will Grier better. And I think that he could be someone that one of those two teams, Jaguars or Giants, say, okay, we're going to pluck him first round.
Now to end this one, and this is going to be a meaty part because this will probably be our longest segment of the podcast. Let's move into the defensive guy, a guy I want to look at very similar to a guy we talked about in Devin Bush, and that is Josh Allen, not the quarterback in Buffalo, the linebacker with the Kentucky Wildcats. I say similar to Devin Bush because I'm going to map it out the same way. I had him at 7. You had him at 15. I was probably a little bit higher on him than you. Mine may be a little bit of taming expectations, and I'm bringing Mel back in. Todd. I'm bringing him back into the conversation because Josh Allen, he had him at number 4. And when I saw that, I went, whoa, Mel, what are you doing? My first thought was I sleeping on this kid the first time? Like, was I like I had to rub my eyes. I'm like, was I missing something the first time? And just to read a little snippet of what Mel's got, he said, I pegged Allen before the season as a potential day 2 pick, so second round, as he broke out in 2017 with 7 sacks and 66 tackles and an interception. He's an underrated. He's been underrated in this class and now has a chance to be a top 10 pick. What are your thoughts on Josh Allen coming into this draft class and kind of projecting how high do you think he will rise? Because I feel like this is the beginning of the rise for Josh Allen, and if he does it right, it's just going to go up and up and up by the time we get to draft day.
Yeah, it is the beginning of the rise for Josh Allen. I really like Josh Allen. I think that he is a great player. I mean, if you just look at one stat alone on Josh Allen from this last year, it's 14 freaking sacks. 14 sacks. This guy was swallowing up quarterbacks in the backfield. That's huge.
For breakfast,
tackle for
dinner.
a loss. Tackle for a loss. He had 8 more tackles for losses this year than he did last year. And this year he had 18 and a half. He upped his total tackle total.
He's also forced 5 fumbles.
I mean, this is a guy, and recovered too, this is a guy who is going to be a huge threat for whatever team that he's on. And this is a player that is just so dominant in his position that you don't see necessarily come around every single day. This is going to be a big get for whoever's able to grab him.
He is going, this to me, Josh Allen, I'm already pegging him. He's going to be a guy that I know, like Mel Kiper said, oh, he could be a top 10 pick. I'm going to say this. He could be a top 5 pick. And the reason why I say that is I know the order is definitely going to change by the time we get to the end of the year. But just take a walk with me, if you may. The 49ers, the Raiders, the Jets, the Cardinals, the Lions, the Falcons. Nick Bosa is your number 1 pass rush. Take him off the board. So whether that's the 49ers, whether that's the Raiders, he'll be off the board. Any of those other teams, from the Raiders to the Falcons right now, if they look at that, and I know the Raiders are one of them because John Gruden trades away Khalil Mack, but then week 1 of the season says they would have won if they had a pass rush, which blows my mind. This could be a guy that right now he's the 2nd or 3rd. I mean, I've got Rashawn Gary ahead of him, so technically the 3rd pass rusher on my rankings right now. One of these teams, I would think, is going to say, it's not our biggest need, but we can't pass this up. Especially in this league where the quarterback on offense is so important. You need a guy that's going to get there. And the thing I love most about him is his best trait is that burst and how he can bend through. Like, I was watching film today, Brandon. Like, he'd get that burst off the line. The offensive lineman would get a nice stance, and he would just contort his body, Mr. like Stretch Armstrong, around the guy, and then would get to the quarterback. The only thing that's his worst trait that I think is the easiest to teach is his counters. How do you counter a good tackle, a good offensive lineman at the next level? A good coach can teach that. You can't teach that burst and that bending ability that he's shown this year.
Well, that's why you look at a guy like Roquan Smith when he was coming out of Georgia.
How he rose.
And how he rose and how he was so quick in his moves and his speed that he was able to get off the edge. That was impressive, and that's one of the reasons why you continue to see him rise in terms of, I mean, our big board, in terms of other big boards, and in terms of mock drafts. I mean, people started to see that, gosh, this guy is fast for the position he's playing. He is crafty for the position he's playing. And I think that we're seeing some of the same things here with Allen.
I'm even going to throw this out, too. I mean, you look at a guy like Marcus Davenport, who's currently with the New Orleans Saints. He was a guy, defensive end. In many of our big boards, we had him like, oh, he's going to be sub 15, like 16 through 25. In the mock drafts, oh, he's going to be late 20s probably because of, or early 20s because of team needs. The Saints go up and trade for him and get him at 14. They say, hey, Packers, we'll give you a first-round pick. We're going to take this guy on the end because we need a guy who can get after quarterbacks. Like, Josh Allen will be a guy either that falls into the Roquan Smith category of he's going to rise and rise and rise because the team's going to go, hey, man, we need to get after quarterbacks. Or a team that's a playoff team is going to trade up for him because they're going to see, hey, how do we get to that next level, especially the Saints. Like, they were a team coming off of that Minnesota Miracle. They needed something. And they're like, we're not going to let offenses beat us next year. They go out and trade up for a defensive guy where I could see a playoff team maybe doing that, and maybe Josh Allen's the guy they trade up for.
I just want to say, too, is look at what he's done in terms of his progression year by year. Is that obviously his freshman season, he only had 3 games. Had, very minimal there. But then in his sophomore campaign, he was in 13 games, 62 total tackles, 8.5 tackles for a loss, 7 sacks. Junior year, 13 games. He upped it. Sacks stayed the same, but tackles for a loss are up. And then obviously his senior season, has the best season out of all of them. And that makes you wonder, this guy just keeps getting better and better and better here in college. What's he going to continue to do when he gets to the next level in the NFL? And that's what's, I think, really impressive. That's also what is probably going to have a lot of scouts excited to see what he does in the bowl game, and excited to see what he does in terms of the combine, because if you're seeing all of this from him, plus he has a stellar combine, man, that's gonna make a scout fall in love.
And just to, I'm not gonna make the comparison, but I am gonna throw this out there. I mean, you look at a guy, he's now in his 4th year in the NFL, who was the last linebacker I remember us seriously scouting from the University of Kentucky, Alvin Bud Dupree, who's from the Steelers, who in 4 years now has, 1 interception, got it this year, but 123 combined tackles, 90 solo tackles, and 29 tackles for loss. Last year had 12, his most at the next level in the NFL in 15 games. So that kind of made me think back to, I remember scouting Bud Dupree from Kentucky. One last thing I want to bring up, and this is just me, kind of a throwaway thing here at the end. I just want to quickly mention the 2 offensive tackles, Greg Little and Jonah Williams, because to me it's going to be interesting to see how the storyline progresses throughout. Because to me, Greg Little's a guy, he's your left tackle. You're going to draft him to be your left tackle, whereas Jonah Williams, I'm thinking, he's a tackle right now. He's probably going to shift inside to guard in the NFL. So it's going to be interesting to see which one goes first. I have Greg Little right now ranked a little bit above Williams only because that left tackle, that blindside tackle, is so crucial, especially when you got all these pass rushers coming at you. So that's why I have Greg Little a little bit higher, but it'll be interesting to see as the process goes along if these guys interchange. Do some teams go, no, we're going to take Williams because we're going to play him at tackle, or will he slide into guard? I just wanted to throw that quickly out there before we move into 1 through 5. But this is where you guys come in. Let us know what you guys think. This was a lengthy segment, but like I said, this will probably be our longest segment of the big board. Let us know what you think about these quarterbacks. Let us know what you think about Josh Allen down below in that comment section.